Violet Harper walked into the corporate lobby for the third time that week, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished marble floor, and wondered if the universe was playing some cosmic joke on her. The reception desk of Riverside Holdings sat empty again, a half-drunk coffee cup abandoned next to a computer screen displaying a screensaver of tropical fish. She clutched her portfolio tighter against her chest and checked her phone. The appointment confirmation email was right there, bold and official, yet here she stood in another empty lobby like some character in a surreal dream. "Hello." Her voice echoed off the sleek walls adorned with abstract art that probably cost more than her annual salary. No response. Violet sighed and lowered herself onto one of the leather chairs that felt more expensive than her entire apartment. This was the third time she'd scheduled a meeting with someone from the marketing department to present her freelance design proposals, and the third time something had gone wrong. First time, the person she was supposed to meet had called in sick. Second time, there had been a fire drill. Now this. She pulled out her phone to reschedule again when the elevator dinged. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in dark jeans and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up. His dark hair was slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, and he had the kind of strong jaw that belonged in cologne advertisements. He looked around the empty lobby with a frown before his eyes landed on her. "Are you waiting for someone?" His voice was deep, authoritative, yet somehow warm. "I had an appointment with Rebecca Chen from marketing," Violet said, standing up and smoothing down her blouse. "But no one's here." The man's frown deepened. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. "Rebecca's out today. Family emergency. Did no one contact you?" "No." Violet tried to keep the frustration out of her voice. "It's fine. I'll just reschedule." "What was the appointment for?" "I'm a freelance graphic designer. I've been working with a few smaller companies in the area, and I submitted a proposal for your marketing materials. This was supposed to be the presentation meeting." She held up her portfolio as evidence. The man studied her for a moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Then he extended his hand. "Zachary Rhodes, I own the company. Why don't you present to me instead?" Violet's brain stuttered. Zachary Rhodes, the Zachary Rhodes. She'd done her research on Riverside Holdings before submitting her proposal, and while she knew the owner was young for someone running a company worth hundreds of millions, she hadn't expected him to look like this, or to materialize in an empty lobby on a Friday afternoon. "I don't want to waste your time," she managed, shaking his hand. His grip was firm and warm. "You're already here. I've got 20 minutes before my next call. Conference room 3. He gestured toward the hallway. Violet followed him through the maze of corridors, her heart hammering. This wasn't how these things were supposed to go. She was supposed to present to a marketing manager, maybe get a small contract, build her portfolio. Not pitch directly to a millionaire CEO who probably had designers on retainer who charged more per hour than she made in a week. The conference room was all glass and chrome, with a view of the city that took her breath away. Zachary sat down and motioned for her to begin. Violet set up her laptop with shaking hands and pulled up her presentation. But once she started talking about design theory, about color psychology and brand identity, her nerves settled. This was her passion. This was what she knew. She showed him mock-ups she'd created for his company, reimagining their current marketing materials with cleaner lines and more cohesive branding. She talked about target demographics and emotional resonance. When she finished, Zachary was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair. "This is good. Really good. Why are you freelancing instead of working for an agency?" "I like the freedom," Violet said, which was partially true. The whole truth was that she'd been rejected by every major agency in the city. Too inexperienced, they said, not enough formal training. She had an art degree from a state school, not some prestigious design institute. And I like working with smaller businesses, helping them find their voice. What would you charge for a complete rebrand? Everything from business cards to website design to advertising materials. Violet named a figure that seemed astronomical to her but was probably pocket change to him. Zachary didn't even blink. I'll have my assistant draw up a contract. Can you start Monday? Really? The word came out more breathless than she intended. Really? He stood and extended his hand again. Welcome to Riverside Holdings, Violet Harper. She floated home that evening, her mind spinning. This was it. This was the break she'd been waiting for. A contract with a major company would open doors, would legitimize her work, would mean she could finally stop eating ramen 3 times a day, and maybe even build some savings. Monday morning arrived with rain and traffic, making Violet 15 minutes late. She rushed into the building, her hair dripping, her portfolio protected under her jacket. The receptionist was there this time, a polished woman who gave her a visitor's badge and directions to her temporary workspace. It wasn't an office, exactly. More like a corner of the marketing department with a desk and a computer. But it had a window, and that felt like luxury. Rebecca Chen stopped by within the first hour, apologizing profusely for missing their meeting and thanking her for the flexibility. Zachary doesn't usually get involved in hiring contractors, Rebecca said, perching on the edge of Violet's desk. She was petite and energetic with sharp eyes that didn't miss much. You must have really impressed him. I think it was more about timing, Violet said, not wanting to make too much of it. Maybe, Rebecca smiled. But he's been talking about refreshing our brand for months and kept rejecting every proposal. Yours is the first one that got him excited. Violet dove into the work with everything she had. She spent her days sketching and designing, presenting options to Rebecca and the marketing team, incorporating feedback, refining concepts. It was exhausting and exhilarating. The company culture was fast-paced but supportive, nothing like the cutthroat environment she'd feared. She didn't see Zachary for the first 2 weeks. He was busy with acquisitions and board meetings and all the things that occupied millionaire CEOs. But she felt his presence in the building, heard people mention him in passing, saw the way the entire company seemed to operate with a certain energy that flowed from the top down. Then one Thursday evening, when most people had gone home and Violet was hunched over her computer trying to perfect a logo variation, someone knocked on her desk partition. Working late, she jumped and spun around. Zachary stood there in a dark suit, his tie loosened, looking tired but alert. Just finishing something up, Violet said, minimizing her screen self-consciously. How are the designs coming along? Good. Really good. Rebecca's been keeping me updated. The new website mock-up is exactly what I was hoping for. Thank you. Violet saved her work and started shutting down her computer. I should probably get going actually. I didn't realize how late it was. Have you eaten? The question caught her off guard. What? Dinner? Have you eaten? Zachary glanced at his watch. It's almost 8. I'm starving and I hate eating alone. There's a good Italian place 2 blocks from here. Violet hesitated. This felt like crossing a line, moving from professional into something murkier. But her stomach growled, betraying her, and Zachary smiled at the sound. Come on. Consider it a working dinner. We can talk about the next phase of the rebrand. The Italian restaurant was cozy and dimly lit, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic bread that made Violet's mouth water. Zachary knew the owner, who greeted him warmly and led them to a corner table. They did talk about work at first, but then the conversation drifted, meandering into other territories. Violet found herself telling him about growing up in a small town upstate, about her parents who still didn't quite understand what she did for a living, about her tiny apartment that she loved despite its quirks. "What about you?" she asked, twirling pasta on her fork. "How does someone end up running a multimillion-dollar company before they're 35? 33, Zachary corrected. "And it wasn't some genius master plan. I studied business and finance, worked in investment banking for a few years, hated every minute of it. Started Riverside Holdings with money I'd saved and a loan I'm still paying off. We focus on acquiring struggling small businesses, turning them around, helping them thrive again. It's satisfying work." "Sounds exciting," he shrugged. "It's a lot of meetings and paperwork and putting out fires." "Not exactly thrilling, but you're good at it. Everyone in the office talks about you like you walk on water. That's terrifying." But he was smiling. "What about your work? Is it everything you hoped it would be?" Violet considered this. "Mostly. I love the creative part, the problem-solving aspect of it. Taking a brand that's confused or outdated and giving it new life. But it's also scary, you know? Freelancing means feast or famine. Some months I'm turning down work. Other months I'm panicking about rent." "Is that why you put in the proposal with us?" "Partially. But also because I really did think I could help. Your company does good work, but your branding doesn't reflect that. It looks corporate and cold when it should look dynamic and caring." Zachary leaned back, studying her. "You see things differently than most people." "Is that a compliment?" "Definitely." They stayed at the restaurant until closing, talking about everything and nothing. When they finally left, the rain had stopped and the streets were slick and shining under the streetlights. Zachary insisted on driving her home, and Violet was too tired to argue. Her apartment building looked particularly shabby in the darkness, with its cracked concrete steps and flickering porch light. She felt a flash of embarrassment as Zachary pulled up to the curb. "Thank you for dinner," she said, gathering her things. "Thank you for the company." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but then just smiled. "See you Monday." Violet lay awake that night, replaying the evening in her mind. It had felt like a date, but it wasn't a date. Zachary was her client, technically her boss for the duration of this project. Getting involved would be stupid and unprofessional. And yet she couldn't stop thinking about the way he listened when she talked, really listened, like her words mattered. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Violet worked during the day, often losing track of time as she refined designs and created new concepts. Zachary would stop by her desk every few days, ostensibly to check on progress, but usually staying to chat about other things. Sometimes he'd bring coffee, remembering without asking that she took it with cream and no sugar. Sometimes he'd invite her to working dinners that felt less and less like work. Rebecca noticed. "You know he never did this with any other contractor," she mentioned one afternoon, a knowing look in her eyes. "Did what?" "Zachary. He's usually hands-off once he hires someone, trusts them to do their job, but he's been very involved with your project." "It's a major rebrand," Violet said defensively. "Makes sense he'd want to stay updated." "Sure." Rebecca's smile said she wasn't buying it. "Just be careful, okay? Zachary's a good guy, but he's also married to this company. It's his whole life." The warning stuck with Violet, making her more aware of the boundary blurring between them. She started keeping their interactions more professional, responding to his casual conversation attempts with work-related topics, declining dinner invitations with excuses about other commitments. Zachary noticed the shift. One evening when she was packing up to leave, he appeared at her desk with that familiar coffee in hand. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked without preamble. "What? No. Why would you think that? You've been avoiding me." Violet focused on zipping up her laptop bag. I haven't been avoiding you, I've been busy. Violet. His voice was gentle. Look at me. She did, reluctantly. His dark eyes were concerned, searching her face. If I crossed a line, I'm sorry, Zachary said. The dinners, the coffee, I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable. I just enjoy your company. That's the problem, Violet blurted out before she could stop herself. I enjoy your company too, and that's confusing because you're my client and I'm trying to be professional and I don't know what this is. Zachary set the coffee down carefully. What do you want it to be? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Violet's heart raced. This was the moment where she should say something sensible about maintaining boundaries, about finishing the project first, about not mixing business with pleasure. I don't know, she said instead, which was more honest. Okay. Zachary nodded slowly. Then how about this? Let's finish the rebrand, do things properly. And then, when you're no longer working for me, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real dinner, not a working one, if you're interested. And if I'm not interested? Then we'll be professional acquaintances who worked together once, and I'll remember you fondly. He smiled, but there was vulnerability in his eyes that made her chest ache. Ask me again when the project's done, Violet said softly. I will. He kept his distance after that, though the awareness between them thrummed like a live wire. Violet threw herself into the final stages of the rebrand, creating a cohesive package that she was genuinely proud of. The new branding was clean and modern but warm, conveying the company's mission of revitalization and growth. The final presentation was scheduled for a Friday afternoon in the main conference room with Zachary, Rebecca, and several other executives. Violet had prepared for days, anticipating questions, creating backup options, making sure every detail was perfect. She needn't have worried. The presentation went flawlessly. The executives loved the new designs, praising the fresh approach while maintaining brand recognition. Rebecca actually got teary-eyed over the website mock-up, and Zachary watched her with an expression that made her skin warm. When it was over and the congratulations had died down, Rebecca pulled her aside. This is phenomenal work, Violet. I'm going to recommend we keep you on retainer for future projects. Really, really. You've more than proven yourself. Violet left the building that evening feeling like she was flying. Her career was taking off. She had steady income lined up. And Zachary was going to ask her to dinner, properly this time, and she was going to say yes. She was halfway home when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, is this Violet Harper? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. Yes. This is Linda Harrison from Creative Edge Agency. We received your portfolio from a colleague and we're very impressed. We'd like to set up an interview. Would you be available next week? Violet nearly dropped her phone. Creative Edge was one of the top design agencies in the city, the kind of place she'd dreamed about working when she first moved here. They'd rejected her application 2 years ago without even an interview. Yes, she said, her voice shaking. Yes, I'd love to. The interview was set for Tuesday morning. Violet spent the weekend in a daze, preparing her portfolio, researching the agency, trying on different outfits. She didn't tell anyone at Riverside Holdings. It felt like tempting fate. The Creative Edge offices were stunning. All exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, filled with creative types wearing interesting clothes and having intense discussions. The interview was with 3 people, including the creative director, and they grilled her for over an hour about her process, her influences, her career goals. At the end, the creative director leaned back in her chair. We'd like to offer you a position as a senior designer. The salary is $80,000 a year plus benefits, with opportunities for advancement. Can you start in 2 weeks? $80,000 a year. That was more than Violet had made in the past 2 years combined. That was stability, prestige, everything she'd worked toward. Yes, she heard herself say. Thank you, I accept. She signed the paperwork in a daze and floated out of the building. This was it. This was everything she'd wanted. So why did she feel a gnawing sense of loss in her stomach? She texted Rebecca that evening, explaining that she'd been offered a full-time position elsewhere and wouldn't be able to take on more projects with Riverside Holdings. Rebecca responded with congratulations and understanding, saying they'd love to work with her again if she ever went back to freelancing. Violet didn't text Zachary. She told herself it was because he was busy, because it wasn't appropriate, because Rebecca would tell him. But really it was because she didn't know what to say. Her last day at Riverside Holdings was the following Friday. She spent it training Rebecca on the new design systems, handing over files, tying up loose ends. Zachary wasn't in the office. His assistant mentioned he was in Boston for meetings, wouldn't be back until Monday. Violet told herself she wasn't disappointed. This was better, cleaner. No awkward goodbyes, no temptation to make promises neither of them could keep. She packed up her desk, hugged Rebecca, and left the building without looking back. Creative edge was everything she'd hoped for and nothing she wanted. The work was challenging and the people were talented, but something felt hollow. She spent her days designing marketing campaigns for luxury brands and tech startups, work that was visually appealing but ultimately soulless. None of it mattered, not the way helping small businesses find their identity had mattered, and she missed Zachary. She missed their conversations, his dry humor, the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room. She checked his LinkedIn profile obsessively, seeing updates about new acquisitions and company milestones. She wondered if he thought about her. She wondered if he'd found someone else to have working dinners with. 3 months into her new job, Violet was working late when her phone buzzed. Unknown number again, but this time when she answered, the voice was familiar. You're a hard person to track down. Zachary's voice sent warmth flooding through her. Zachary. She stepped out of her cubicle and into the hallway for privacy. How did you get my number? Rebecca, don't be mad at her, I had to beg. How are you? I'm good, busy. The new job is intense. The words felt inadequate. That's what I heard. Creative edge, right? That's a big deal. It is. Violet leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. How are you? Honestly, not great. I've been trying to respect your space, let you settle into your new life, but I can't stop thinking about you, Violet. And I promised I'd ask you to dinner when you weren't working for me anymore, so here I am. Will you have dinner with me? Her heart hammered. Zachary, if you're not interested, just say so. I'm a big boy, I can handle rejection. But if there's any part of you that wants this too, give me a chance. I do want this, Violet admitted. I've wanted it for months, but our lives are so different. You're running a company, you're successful and established, and I'm just starting to figure things out. So we'll figure them out together. His voice was firm. I'm not asking you to marry me, Violet. I'm asking you to dinner. One dinner. If it's terrible, we never have to do it again. But if it's good, if it's as good as I think it could be, then we keep going. We take it one day at a time. Okay, she whispered. Okay, yes. Dinner. They met at a French bistro on Saturday evening. Violet wore a blue dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion and spent far too long on her makeup. When she arrived, Zachary was already there, wearing dark slacks and a gray sweater that made his eyes look even darker. He stood when he saw her, and the smile that crossed his face made her knees weak. You look beautiful, he said simply. You look pretty good yourself. The awkwardness she'd feared never materialized. They fell into conversation as easily as they always had, talking about work and life and the city changing around them. Zachary told her about a new company he was acquiring, a family-owned manufacturing business that had been struggling since the founder's retirement. Violet told him about a campaign she was working on that felt meaningless, designing ads for overpriced handbags. "You don't sound happy," Zachary observed. Violet sighed. "I thought this was what I wanted. The prestigious agency, the steady paycheck, the fancy office, but I miss the work I was doing before. I miss feeling like what I created mattered. So quit." "What? Quit?" Zachary said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. "Go back to freelancing. Work with companies you care about. It's not that easy. The money, the stability, is worth being miserable every day." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Violet, I've watched people trap themselves in jobs they hate because it's safe. Don't be one of them. You're too talented, too passionate. Do work that matters to you. Easy for you to say, you're a millionaire. I am now, but I wasn't always. And I got here by taking risks, by doing what felt right even when it was scary." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I am saying you're capable of it." They stayed at the restaurant until closing time again, and Violet realized it was becoming their thing. When they finally left, Zachary walked her to her car, his hand warm in hers. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Tomorrow, maybe. I know a great breakfast place." "Tomorrow's Sunday, I'm aware." Violet laughed. "Don't you have millionaire things to do, acquisitions to acquire, money to count?" "I've got something better to do. Spend time with you." They fell into a pattern of seeing each other whenever their schedules allowed, which turned out to be most evenings and weekends. Zachary introduced her to his world gradually, taking her to gallery openings and charity events where she met other entrepreneurs and business owners. Some of them needed design work, and Violet started taking on small projects on the side, rediscovering her passion. One evening, about 2 months into their relationship, they were at Zachary's penthouse apartment, a sprawling space with views of the entire city. Violet was curled up on his couch, sketching logo ideas while he reviewed contracts. It felt domestic and comfortable. "I'm thinking about quitting Creative Edge," she said suddenly. Zachary looked up from his papers. Yeah. I've been getting enough freelance work that I think I could make it full-time. It's risky, but I'm miserable at the agency. And you were right. Life's too short to be miserable." "I'm proud of you." He set his work aside and moved to sit next to her. "And I want you to know, whatever you decide, I've got your back. If you need help with anything, clients, finances, just moral support, I'm here." "Thank you." Violet kissed him softly. "That means everything." She gave her notice the following Monday. Her boss at Creative Edge was disappointed but understanding, and they parted on good terms. Violet set up a home office in her apartment and threw herself into building her freelance business properly this time, with a real website and a portfolio that reflected her best work. The clients started coming, slowly at first, and then in a steady stream. Small businesses who needed rebranding, nonprofits looking for fresh identities, entrepreneurs launching new ventures. The work was satisfying in a way her agency job never had been. She was making a difference, helping people tell their stories. Zachary was her biggest cheerleader. He introduced her to people in his network, promoted her work on his social media, and celebrated every new client with champagne and takeout. Their relationship deepened, moving from exciting and new to comfortable and solid. Violet kept a drawer at his place. He had a key to her apartment. They talked about the future in vague but happy terms. One Saturday morning, about 6 months into their relationship, Violet woke up in Zachary's bed to find him already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "What?" she mumbled, still half asleep. "I'm in love with you," he said simply. Violet's brain took a moment to process the words. Then she sat up, suddenly very awake. "What? I'm in love with you. I have been for a while, but I wanted to wait until I was sure. I'm sure." He reached for her hand. "You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." "You love me," Violet repeated, testing the words. "Completely." She thought about the past 6 months, about how Zachary had supported her career change without hesitation, how he made her laugh even on her worst days, how safe she felt with him. She thought about the way her heart lifted whenever she saw him, how everything felt better when he was around. "I love you too," she said, and watched his face transform with joy. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and they didn't leave the apartment for the rest of the day. But as their relationship grew more serious, Violet found herself struggling with insecurities she thought she'd left behind. Zachary moved in circles she could barely imagine, attending events where people casually discussed their vacation homes and yacht clubs. He was comfortable in that world, had been born into money and privilege even if he'd multiplied it through his own efforts. Meanwhile, Violet still shopped at thrift stores and stressed over her quarterly tax payments. The gap between their lifestyles felt impossibly wide sometimes. It came to a head one evening when Zachary invited her to a gala benefiting a children's hospital. It was a black tie event, the kind where tickets cost $1,000 a plate. Violet panicked about what to wear, eventually buying a dress she couldn't really afford and feeling like a fraud the entire evening. Everyone at the gala seemed to know Zachary, and he moved through the crowd with easy confidence, introducing Violet as his girlfriend. She smiled and made small talk but felt increasingly out of place. These people discussed things she knew nothing about, made references to places she'd never been, lived lives that seemed impossibly glamorous. On the drive home, Zachary noticed her unusual silence. "Everything okay?" "I don't fit in your world," Violet said quietly. "What are you talking about, tonight? That whole event? Those people with their designer dresses and their summer homes in the Hamptons? That's not me, Zachary. I'm a girl from a small town who's still figuring out how to run a business. I'm not exciting enough for your life." Zachary pulled the car over, turning to face her with an intensity that took her breath away. "Are you serious right now?" "I'm being realistic. You could date anyone. Models, successful businesswomen, people who understand your world. Why would you want to be with someone like me? Someone like you?" His voice was incredulous. "Violet, do you have any idea what my life was like before I met you? It was work, all day, every day. Meetings and acquisitions and strategy sessions. I was good at it, I was successful, but I was bored. Everything felt like another task to complete, another goal to achieve. That sounds exciting to me. It wasn't. It was empty." He took her hands in his. "Then I met you, and suddenly everything was different. You see the world in this unique way, finding beauty and meaning in ordinary things. You care about helping people, about making a difference, not just making money. You challenge me, make me laugh, make me want to be better. But I'm so boring compared to your life. You're not boring, you're real. And being with you is the greatest adventure I've ever had." His voice was fierce. "I don't want someone who fits perfectly into my world. I want someone who makes me question that world, who reminds me why I started this company in the first place. I want you." Violet felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm scared. What if I'm not enough? You're everything." Zachary wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "Please don't doubt that." She kissed him then, pouring all her love and fear and hope into it. When they pulled apart, she felt lighter, like a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had lifted. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm working on it, the insecurity thing. We'll work on it together." He kissed her forehead. "And for the record, I hate those galas. I only go because it's expected. I'd much rather be eating pizza on your couch watching bad movies. Really, really." Things got easier after that conversation. Violet stopped trying to fit into Zachary's world and started just being herself, and found that people responded better to her authenticity anyway. She made friends with some of the other entrepreneurs in his network, people who were building businesses and chasing dreams like her. Her own business continued to grow. She hired an assistant, then another designer to help with overflow work. What had started as a scrappy freelance operation was becoming a real agency. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Zachary proposed on a random Tuesday evening, nothing dramatic or elaborate. They were cooking dinner together in his kitchen, and Violet was arguing that his pasta sauce needed more garlic when he suddenly set down his wooden spoon and dropped to one knee. "Marry me," he said, pulling a ring box from his pocket. Violet stared at him, her brain short-circuiting. "What?" "Marry me. I know it's not romantic. I had this whole plan for next weekend with the fancy restaurant and the sunset, but I don't want to wait. I want to spend the rest of my life cooking dinner with you and arguing about garlic. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want everything. Violet, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out as barely more than a whisper. Then louder, "Yes, yes, of course, yes." The ring was beautiful, a simple diamond on a platinum band, elegant and understated. It fit perfectly. Zachary stood and kissed her, and Violet tasted salt and realized she was crying. "The sauce is burning," she mumbled against his lips. "I don't care." But he turned off the stove anyway, then picked her up and carried her to the bedroom, dinner forgotten. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a botanical garden. Violet's parents flew in from upstate, still slightly bewildered by their daughter's whirlwind romance with a millionaire, but clearly happy. Zachary's family was smaller, just a sister and her family, but they welcomed Violet with open arms. Rebecca was Violet's maid of honor, and she cried through the entire ceremony. "I knew it," she kept saying. "From that first dinner I knew." The reception was intimate, just close friends and family, held in a restored barn with string lights and wildflowers. Violet wore a simple white dress that she'd found at a boutique, and Zachary couldn't take his eyes off her all night. They danced to an old jazz song, swaying together as the sun set through the windows. "Happy," Zachary murmured in her ear. "Incredibly." Violet pulled back to look at him. "I can't believe this is my life. Better than pizza on the couch, about equal." She laughed at his mock offended expression. "I'm kidding. This is perfect. You're perfect. Not perfect, but perfect for you." Married life suited them. Violet moved into Zachary's penthouse, though they kept her apartment as office space for her growing agency. They fell into comfortable routines, morning coffee together before work, evening walks along the river, weekend adventures exploring the city or escaping to the countryside. Violet's business continued to thrive. She was working with over 50 clients now, had a team of 5 designers, and was starting to get recognition in the industry. A design magazine did a profile on her, calling her one of the most innovative young designers in the city. Zachary framed the article and hung it in his office. They talked about starting a family but decided to wait. They were young, their careers were demanding, and they wanted time to just be together. But they did get a dog, a rescue mutt named Pepper, who was all legs and enthusiasm. Zachary, who claimed he'd never been a dog person, was completely smitten within hours. About a year into their marriage, Zachary came home one evening looking thoughtful. Violet was working on her laptop at the dining table, Pepper snoring at her feet. "I've been thinking," he said, loosening his tie. "Dangerous," Violet teased. "I'm serious. I've been running Riverside Holdings for almost 10 years now. It's successful, it's stable, I've got a great management team, but I'm not passionate about it anymore. It feels like I'm just going through the motions." Violet closed her laptop, giving him her full attention. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time for a change. I could hire a CEO to run day-to-day operations, stay on as chairman but step back from the daily grind. Focus on things I actually care about." He sat down across from her. "I've been thinking about starting a nonprofit, something that helps struggling small businesses get back on their feet. Free consulting, small grants, mentorship programs. Actually make a difference instead of just making money." "Zachary, that's amazing." Violet reached across the table for his hand. "You should absolutely do it. It would mean less income, at least initially. We'd have to tighten our budget. I don't care about the money, you know that." She squeezed his hand. "I want you to do work that fulfills you. And honestly, I think you'd be brilliant at it." He smiled, the tension leaving his shoulders. "I was hoping you'd say that. Besides, my agency is doing well. We'll be fine financially, and even if we weren't, we'd figure it out together." Zachary stood and came around the table, pulling her into his arms. "How did I get so lucky?" "You pulled over when you saw someone waiting in an empty lobby," Violet reminded him. "Could have just driven by, but you stopped. Best decision I ever made." Zachary spent the next 6 months transitioning out of his daily role at Riverside Holdings and setting up his nonprofit, which he called Foundation Forward. Violet helped with the branding, creating a logo and identity system that was professional but approachable. They officially launched on a rainy Tuesday with a small press conference and a website full of resources for small business owners. The response was overwhelming. Applications for help poured in from struggling entrepreneurs across the state. Zachary assembled a team of volunteer consultants, set up workshops and mentorship programs, and distributed their first round of small grants. He came home every evening energized and excited, talking about the people he was helping and the difference they were making. "You were right," he told Violet one night as they were getting ready for bed. "This is so much better than what I was doing before. I actually feel like my work matters." "I'm proud of you," Violet said, kissing him. "You're going to help so many people. We're going to help so many people. None of this would have happened without you." 2 years into their marriage, Violet's agency landed its biggest client yet, a national retail chain that wanted a complete rebrand. It was the kind of project that could put her company on the map nationally, but it would require significant time and resources. She agonized over whether to take it on. "What's holding you back?" Zachary asked when she brought it up over dinner. "It's such a big commitment." 6 months minimum, maybe longer. I'd have to hire more staff, maybe rent a bigger office. And what if I screw it up? What if I'm not ready for this level of work? Are you interested in the project itself? Does it excite you? Violet considered. "Actually, yes. They're a family-owned company that's trying to compete with the big box stores. They have a good story, good values. I think I could help them connect with customers in a meaningful way." "Then do it." Zachary said it with such confidence that some of Violet's anxiety eased. "You're ready, Violet. You've been ready. Stop doubting yourself. What if I fail?" "Then you fail and you learn from it and you try again. But you won't fail. You're too talented and too dedicated." Violet took the project. It was grueling, requiring long hours and intense focus, but it was also one of the most rewarding things she'd ever done. Her team rose to the challenge, creating a branding package that was modern and authentic, telling the company's story while positioning them for growth. When they presented the final work, the client's CEO got emotional. "This is exactly what we needed," she said. "You've captured everything we are and everything we want to be." The rebrand was a massive success. Sales increased, the company expanded into new markets, and Violet's agency started getting inquiries from other national brands. She hired more staff, rented a proper office space, and started turning down projects that didn't align with her values. "Remember when you said you weren't exciting enough?" Zachary asked one evening, scrolling through an industry website that had just named Violet's agency one of the top design firms in the region. "Don't remind me," Violet groaned. "I was such an insecure mess." "You were human." "But I meant what I said that night. Being with you is the greatest adventure. Watching you build this business, seeing you come into your own, sharing all these moments together, that's more exciting than anything else in my life. Even more exciting than that time we went skydiving." "We went skydiving once and you threw up after we landed." "I threw up after we landed, which means I technically handled it fine." Zachary laughed, pulling her close. "Fine, second most exciting after skydiving, but a close second." They celebrated their third anniversary with a trip to Italy. 2 weeks of wandering through ancient cities and eating incredible food and getting lost in winding streets. It was the longest either of them had been away from work, and it felt decadent and necessary in equal measure. On their last night in Rome, they had dinner at a tiny restaurant recommended by their hotel concierge. The food was perfect, the wine was better, and Violet felt utterly content. "I've been thinking about kids," Zachary said suddenly. Violet set down her wine glass. Yeah. "I know we said we'd wait and we don't have to rush into anything, but I'm ready. Whenever you are." Violet thought about it. Her business was stable now, running smoothly even in her absence. Zachary's nonprofit was established and thriving. They had a good life, a strong relationship, and love to spare. "I think I'm ready too," she said softly. Zachary's face lit up. Really, I mean, it's terrifying. I have no idea how to be a parent, but I know I want to do it with you. We'll figure it out together." He reached across the table for her hand. "Just like we figure out everything else." It took a few months, but Violet got pregnant just before their 4th anniversary. The pregnancy was harder than she expected, with morning sickness that lasted all day and exhaustion that made working difficult. But Zachary was endlessly patient, taking over household duties and making sure she rested. Her team at the agency stepped up, handling day-to-day operations while Violet supervised remotely. She'd built a good company with strong people, and she trusted them to maintain the standards she'd established. Their daughter was born on a snowy January morning, tiny and perfect and screaming at the top of her lungs. They named her Vera, which meant faith. Zachary cried when he held her for the first time, and Violet fell in love all over again watching him be gentle with their tiny baby. Parenthood was chaos. Sleepless nights and constant worry and more laundry than seemed physically possible. But it was also joy, pure and overwhelming. Vera's first smile, her first laugh, the way she reached for them when she was upset. Every moment felt precious. Violet took 3 months of maternity leave, then transitioned back to work part-time. Zachary adjusted his schedule at the nonprofit so they could split childcare duties. It wasn't always easy, juggling their careers and their daughter and their relationship, but they made it work. When Vera was 6 months old, they had her baptized at a small church ceremony. Both sets of grandparents were there, cooing over their granddaughter. Rebecca came too, now a friend as much as a former colleague, and took approximately 1,000 photos. "You two look tired," Rebecca observed at the reception afterward. "We are tired," Violet admitted, "but happy tired." "She's beautiful. You're going to be amazing parents." "We're already amazing parents," Zachary said, bouncing Vera in his arms. "Look at this perfect child we made." "Your humility is truly inspiring," Rebecca deadpanned. As Vera grew, their life found a new rhythm. Violet scaled back her agency work even more, hiring a managing director to handle operations while she focused on creative direction and major clients. Zachary did the same with Foundation Forward, building a strong leadership team that could run programs without constant oversight. They wanted to be present for Vera's childhood, to not miss the important moments while chasing career success. They'd both worked too hard for too long, and now they wanted to prioritize differently. When Vera was 2, they started talking about having another baby. The pregnancy happened quickly this time, and 9 months later they welcomed a son they named Vincent. He was calmer than Vera had been, an easy baby who slept through the night early and smiled constantly. Their penthouse felt smaller with 2 kids and a dog, so they started looking at houses. They found a beautiful old Victorian in a family-friendly neighborhood, with a big backyard and enough bedrooms that everyone could have their own space. Violet fell in love with it immediately. "It needs work," the realtor warned. "The kitchen's original, the bathrooms need updating." "That's fine," Zachary said, watching Violet wander through the rooms with a dreamy expression. "We can renovate." They moved in that summer and spent the next year gradually updating the house. Violet designed every detail, from the kitchen cabinets to the bathroom tiles, creating spaces that were both beautiful and functional. The house became a true home, filled with laughter and noise and love. Violet's agency continued operating successfully with her reduced involvement, proving she'd built something that could thrive beyond her constant presence. Zachary's nonprofit had helped hundreds of small businesses by now, with success stories featured in business journals and news programs. But the work, while still important, was no longer the center of their lives. That center was their family, the 4 of them plus Pepper, who tolerated the children's attention with patient dignity. When Vera started kindergarten, Violet cried, "She's too little to be in school all day." "She's 5. That's literally the age kids start school," Zachary pointed out. "I know, but look at her. She's a baby." Vera was not a baby. She was confident and creative, already showing signs of her mother's artistic talent and her father's determination. She loved school, made friends easily, and came home every day bursting with stories. Vincent, meanwhile, was developing his own personality. He was quieter than his sister but intensely curious, taking apart toys to see how they worked and asking endless questions about everything. One evening, when the kids were finally asleep and the house was quiet, Violet and Zachary collapsed onto the couch together. "I'm exhausted," Violet said. "Same." Zachary pulled her close. "But good exhausted. Remember when I thought my life was boring? When I told you I wasn't exciting enough? I remember telling you that being with you was the greatest adventure." He kissed the top of her head. "I meant it then and I mean it now. Every day with you is an adventure. Even the days that are just carpools and grocery shopping and helping with homework. Especially those days. That's real life, Violet. That's what matters. Not the fancy galas or the business deals or any of that external stuff. This, us, our family, that's the adventure." Violet tilted her head up to kiss him properly. "I love you. I love you too. More than I thought possible." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying the quiet and each other's presence. Outside, the city hummed with activity, but in their home, everything was peaceful. Years passed in the way they do when life is full and happy. Vera and Vincent grew, hitting milestones and developing their own interests. The agency became one of the most respected design firms in the region. Foundation Forward expanded into 3 states, helping more small businesses than Zachary had ever dreamed possible. But the most important changes were the small ones. Family dinners where everyone talked about their day. Weekend trips to the beach or the mountains. Birthday parties and school plays and lazy Sunday mornings. The accumulation of ordinary moments that made up an extraordinary life. When Violet turned 35, Zachary threw her a surprise party at the house. All their friends came, including Rebecca, who had become such a close friend that Vera and Vincent called her Aunt Becca. Violet's parents were there too, her father finally admitting he understood what she did for a living, mostly. Speech, someone called out when Violet cut the cake. Violet laughed. I'm terrible at speeches. That's never stopped you before, Zachary pointed out. She looked around at all the faces she loved, at the life she'd built, and felt emotion well up in her chest. Okay, fine. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for being part of our lives. 10 years ago, I was struggling to make rent and wondering if I'd ever figure things out. Now, I have this amazing career, this beautiful family, this full life. And it's all because I walked into a lobby at the right time and met a man who saw something in me I didn't see in myself. That's not true, Zachary interrupted. It was all there already. I just got lucky that you let me be part of it. We got lucky, Violet corrected. We found each other and we built something beautiful together. So thank you, all of you, for celebrating that with us. Now can we please eat this cake because I've been staring at it for 10 minutes and I'm starving. Everyone laughed and the party continued. Later, after the guests had left and the kids were asleep and they were cleaning up together, Zachary pulled Violet into his arms. Happy birthday. It was perfect. You're perfect. I'm really not, but I'm perfect for you. You are. Violet rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. We did good, didn't we? We built a good life, the best life, and we're not done yet. We've got decades ahead of us, more adventures to have. I can't wait. They stood there in their kitchen, surrounded by the comfortable mess of a lived-in home, and Violet felt profoundly grateful. She thought about that scared girl who'd waited in an empty lobby, who'd thought she wasn't exciting enough for a millionaire's attention. She wished she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, all the love and success and joy that waited just around the corner. But maybe it was better that she hadn't known. Maybe the journey was sweeter because she doubted, because she'd had to learn to believe in herself and in their love. What are you thinking about? Zachary asked. Just that I'm really happy. Really, genuinely, completely happy. Me too. He kissed her forehead. Me too. Years continued to unfold. Vera decided she wanted to study art in college, following in her mother's creative footsteps. Vincent was more interested in business and social impact, inspired by his father's nonprofit work. They were good kids, thoughtful and kind, and Violet and Zachary were incredibly proud of them. The agency eventually merged with another firm, allowing Violet to step back even more while ensuring her legacy continued. She started teaching design classes at a local university, finding joy in mentoring the next generation of creative professionals. Zachary handed over leadership of Foundation Forward to a protege he'd been grooming for years, staying on as an advisor but no longer managing daily operations. He and Violet finally had time to travel, to pursue hobbies they'd neglected, to simply enjoy each other's company without the constant demands of work and parenting. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they returned to the botanical garden where they'd gotten married. It had been Violet's idea, a chance to remember where they'd started. 20 years, Zachary said, standing in the same spot where they'd exchanged vows. Feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time. I know what you mean. Violet took his hand. If you could go back and do it again, would you change anything? Not a single thing. Every moment, good and bad, led us here, and here is pretty perfect. Even that time I accidentally donated your favorite jacket to charity. Even then. Though I'm still not entirely convinced it was an accident, Violet grinned. "It was hideous, Zachary. I did you a favor." He laughed and pulled her close, and they danced together in the garden with no music, just the sound of the wind through the trees and the beating of their hearts. "You know what I realized," Violet said after a while. "That night when I told you I wasn't exciting enough, I was so wrong. But not because my life became more exciting, because I learned that love is the adventure. Building a life with someone, facing challenges together, celebrating victories and weathering storms. That's the real excitement." "Took you long enough to figure it out," Zachary teased. "I had a good teacher." They stayed in the garden until the sun set, reminiscing and dreaming about the future. They still had so much life ahead of them, so many more memories to make. Grandchildren to spoil, places to visit, projects to work on together. But more than any specific plan or goal, they had each other. And that, Violet had learned, was the greatest adventure of all. When they finally left the garden and drove home through the twilight, Violet reached over and took Zachary's hand. He glanced over and smiled, that same smile that had made her heart skip all those years ago in a conference room. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Always." And as they drove through the city toward their home and their life and their future, Violet felt nothing but gratitude. For the empty lobby and the patient millionaire. For every moment of doubt that had led to certainty. For the ordinary days and the extraordinary ones. For the whole beautiful adventure of loving and being loved in return. Their story had started with an ending, Violet closing the door on what she thought she wanted and accidentally finding what she'd always needed. And now, 20 years later, it was still beginning, still unfolding, still full of possibility. Because that was the thing about love, real love. It wasn't a destination. It was the journey itself, the greatest adventure two people could take together. And Violet and Zachary had only just begun.